I just wanted to give a little bit more time for those that might be encountering technical difficulties with the registration process before we get started today for the Traffic Lawyers of Texas Summer Ethics webinar. This is a bit of new ground for all of us, and we appreciate the grace being extended to everyone that is participating remotely in this presentation. We're going to wait an additional 3 or 4 minutes. It's, by my clock, it's a little bit after 10 a.m. right now on Saturday, August 15th, 2020. Again, we will wait for a few more minutes to allow stragglers to be able to access the seminar. The live presentation is today. This presentation is also being recorded and will be available on demand, and will still allow you to receive 2 hours of ethics, continuing legal education credit. We will go through all of the details. I'll be expressing all of the details for how the reporting will happen. And again, we appreciate your patience. We're going to wait an additional 2 minutes and then we will get started. We're very excited for the presentations today from our panelists. I'll be introducing them as well as some additional housekeeping measures. I'm going to wait 1 more minute before we get started. And again, thank you for your grace and your patience as we allow the technical issues to be worked out for those that have registered either this morning or right now, so that you can participate fully in this presentation. It is now time for us to get started. Let me introduce myself. My name is Justin Holt. I am the 2020-2021 president of the Traffic Lawyers of Texas Bar Association, the only statewide organization focused on the unique issues encountered by practitioners in defense of Class C misdemeanor allegations in justice, municipal, and county courts. Traffic Lawyers of Texas has been providing continuing legal education seminars for more than 28 years, and we are pleased for you to participate virtually for the very first time due to the unique challenges we are all experiencing due to the novel coronavirus. This CLE is being recorded and will be made available on demand in the coming weeks for those participants that could not join us today for the live broadcast. The CLE course number for the live broadcast will be provided to you via email to the address you provided at registration at the conclusion of this webinar. If you do not receive the required information to self-report your participation in the CLE, please email me at trafficlawyersoftexasonline@gmail.com. Again, that email address, all spelled out, no abbreviations, trafficlawyersoftexasonline@gmail.com. If you are participating in the CLE on demand, upon completion of the CLE, you will receive instructions, again, via email to the address you provided at registration for self-reporting your CLE credit. Your registration fees today include this 2-hour ethics online webinar, as well as access to the in-person conference with an additional 6 hours of continuing legal education to be presented in Austin, Texas. We hope in the first part of January 2021, and it will also include a listing in the Traffic Lawyers of Texas online directory. Additional details and information for the January 2021 CLE in Austin will be sent to the email address you provided at registration. We will also make that information available at our website, which is trafficlawyersofTexas.org, O-R-G, all spelled out, no abbreviations, trafficlawyersofTexas.org, or on our Facebook page. If you are not already following us on Facebook, I would encourage you to go log into Facebook, search for Traffic Lawyers of Texas, and follow us so that you can have the latest updates. The board has decided to institute an update for the Traffic Lawyers of Texas online directory to better reflect our active membership and improve the resources available to our membership by inclusion in the online directory. Additional information regarding the directory update will also be sent to the email address you provided at registration. Today's CLE will consist of 2 presentations of approximately 1 hour each, with time allotted for a moderated question and answer period for live participants. If you have a question for any of our presenters, please use the Zoom question and answer button, which should be at the bottom of your screen, anytime during the presentation to submit your question. I will do my best to address all questions and present those questions during the Q&A period to our panelists. Our first speaker today will be Mr. Robert Bennett. Bob Bennett has been providing guidance and support for lawyers and other licensed professionals involved in the disciplinary process for nearly 40 years. Bob will help us all better understand the resources available from the State Bar of Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. Mr. Bennett, the time is yours.
I'm unmuted now, and so I see I'm on, but I don't see the program. So if we can have just that program show up, let me see if we can get that going here. And I thought that we had the program, but it's not showing right now. So we're off to a quick start. Cynthia, can somebody help me just start that program or touch base with me or let me know what's going on? We have, I know, 24 participants who are waiting.
Bob, we show
Yes.
that the PowerPoint is on the screen.
Okay, I can't see it though. I guess that's the problem that I'm having with my screen. And I'll try that. I have different windows open, but it's not the
It looks like we lost Bob temporarily, hopefully. Let's give him a minute to get logged back in.
This is Justin Holt again. We appreciate your patience as we work out the technical difficulties to get Mr. Bennett reconnected so that he can give us his presentation about the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program resources available to us all and his expertise in representing licensed professionals through the disciplinary process. So again, we sincerely appreciate your patience, and Bob, I expect, will be right back with us momentarily.
Muted. So let me, it says muted by host. I'm muted by host. So can people hear me now? Okay, I can see everybody. Okay, so I'm gonna start my video. Oh, that's the program. Okay, so I see that I'm on camera. I assume everybody can hear me, but I don't have the program up. So I need the program up. And I thought that Cynthia or somebody else was going to start the program. It's where we left it last. So do we know whether the program is going to be started or not?
Bob, the PowerPoint is on everyone's screen. Everyone can see the PowerPoint.
Okay, but I can't see it. So what do I need to do to, I can share screen?
Don't share screen.
Okay, I'm not going to share screen. Okay, I see one screen up on the far right. Can I click on that and go from there?
Yeah, maybe try, if you see your video, try to click on the bottom right corner of your video. That might open the webinar window back up.
Okay. Okay, let me take, now I think I have that. And I'll click here.
There you go.
Okay, so I can see it right now. I'm sorry for the delay. Okay, let me start with just a little brief introduction. I used to be with a small firm called the Department of Justice, and I was a federal prosecutor for about 5 years. I've now practiced close to 46 years. And in the last 20 years, I've practiced what I call representing doctors, lawyers, and judges who do not play well with others. The purpose of this seminar this morning, though, is to get you familiar with what has been happening in the grievance arena. We're going to talk about some of the new rules that have come up. We'll talk about some of the new preventive steps you can take. But in the last legislative session, some of the state senators got mad because they didn't see enough grievances being filed. And so they wanted to put in place additional weapons or additional steps that could be taken by what's called the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how they have been weaponized to be able to investigate more. And all that comes back to you, the individual practice or the small practice, which has traditionally been the target of the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel. As we can see that this is big business. We collect around $442 million in revenue. We have a large staff in Austin. Here we go. And Mr. Watkins, who is a former member, estimates that if you practice since 1999, you're probably going to have at least 2 disciplinary complaints filed against you. And it doesn't help to know that Texas has one of the most complicated and expensive systems for handling grievances in the country. Our present disciplinary system starts off with anyone who wants to can file an inquiry. So you don't have to be a client, you don't have to be a judge, you don't have to be anyone other than you feel that somehow a person has engaged in professional misconduct. So that's the first threshold. You just are a person from the street, believe that there's been some type of professional misconduct, and you can file an inquiry. Now, that goes to the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel, and then they decide whether or not they're going to turn it into a complaint. And a complaint simply as another threshold, which says, would a reasonable person looking at this think that a violation has occurred? And that's all you need to get you to the next level, to be investigated by the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel. Then you will get a letter from them saying, we think that you have violated the rules, ethical rules, and we need to have you respond. So the critical area and the most important area starting off and dealing with a grievance is this area when you're asked to respond to this complaint and whether they're going to turn it into inquiry, whether they're going to actually turn it into a complaint. Now, let me back off a little bit and go over a few ground rules here so that I'll be sure to cover them and we'll make sure that you understand some of the basics. Some of you have actually handled grievances. I understand that. Some of you may never had a grievance in your life. Some of you may be looking at a grievance right now. So there's some really good sources, and I'll have it on this slide and make that available to anyone who wants it. But one of the first areas that you can go to for help with the complaint that's been filed against you is the ethics hotline. And we have that number as part of this, the ethics hotline. The people that man that are very good. They're very efficient, and they'll get back to you within 24 hours, if not sooner. You can't have your personal secretary or legal assistant or someone who is not a bar member call for you. They will only answer and talk to the attorney who calls them. But once you have them on the line, they are very helpful. They're not going to give you an advisory opinion, but they will talk to you. You can make notes, and you can even send a note back to them just to memorialize that conversation. I had this question about my trust account. You answered it this way. I appreciate it very much. And then you have in the file, not a memo from them, but a memo that you made having talked to them. So that 1-800 hotline number is indispensable and one of the best services the bar provides. They have now decided that there has been professional misconduct. They will investigate further. They'll ask for you to make a response. Once that's done, you'll get a letter which says, we have found this professional misconduct, and you have the right now to have either an evidentiary hearing or you may go to civil district court. And going to civil district court is probably not the best choice. And the main reason for not going to civil district court is that if you take your case, take your grievance case to civil district court, you will not be entitled to a private reprimand. If you take it to the evidentiary panel, you then have the option at least the panel has the option of giving you a private reprimand, which is private and is not supposed to be known by anybody. The little important fact you need to know, though, is that if the person who complains against you find out that, and will find out that a private reprimand has been made, that private individual, non-attorney, can publicize that, and there's not a whole lot the bar will do about that. Okay, so this is the system in front of you dealing with how this process works. First is a grievance. It's classified then as a complaint. You do have a right for voluntary mediation, dispute resolution at this early stage. I have never found that to be really helpful, but that's one of the new procedures they use. Also, the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel has been authorized at any step along the way to try to reach a resolution with you. So if at any step along the way you think you can negotiate with them and reach some resolution, probably not a dismissal, but you can take a private reprimand, a public reprimand, a reprimand with probation. You can work out a disbarment if that's what you think is in your best interest. There is also a program called the Grievance Referral Program. That's an excellent program. It's more of a minor procedural mistake. You had a mistake in accounting. You really didn't communicate as well, but it caused no harm. And so this grievance program, grievance referral program, is also a good program to get into because, again, there's no record of that. And they will allow you to take some CLE, maybe be mentored, maybe monitored. It can't be an outrageous situation, or they're not going to allow you into the grievance referral program. But that's a program we try to get our clients into if we can negotiate that. Then you have your selection, as I talked about earlier. You can go through the evidentiary hearing, or you can go to district court. It's rare that you would actually want to go to district court, but we are the only state in the great union that allows you a jury trial on a grievance matter. And if it's something that you think a jury should hear, if it's, well, or if it's something you think you can get rid of by summary judgment. So depending on the judge, depending on the slam dunk nature of the facts, and you think that there's good law supporting that, then that might be an option to try to get a summary judgment in district court. On the evidentiary hearing, that's appealed to the Board of Disciplinary Appeals. And then with the district court, you appeal to the Court of Appeals and ultimately to the Texas Supreme Court. Now, let me see if I cannot advance this a little more. Here we go. We now have a committee on disciplinary rules. This is a new process by which we will be promulgating new grievance rules. If you have a problem with one of the rules, or you feel rules should be changed, or you feel that a rule is too severe, this is where the body is that will make the determination before it's sent out to the bar in general. What's happening right now, and I'm going to take an aside here because I do want to talk about this in light of another thing, and that is at the special directors meeting of the State Bar of Texas Board of Directors, there was a motion made to have the bar look at American Bar Association 804G. And we'll put that up, and I'll explain to you what that rule involves. That rule has previously been ruled against by the Texas Supreme Court and by this committee, but given the, I would say, the emotional tone, given what has happened at the last special directors meeting, this may be a new rule that will be considered. And basically, it deals with any insults, any type of detrimental statement, race, class, gender, etc. If I'm and the rule is written so you have to be in a situation of practice of law that's broadly defined, or social setting uh, within the practice of law. And I was trying to think exactly what that means or how that could be used. Okay, so going back again, this is not the law in Texas. This is not it being recommended right now. It's being studied. This 804 rule would apply if I'm at a cocktail party with other lawyers, a recruiting party, and somebody hears me say, I think Joe Jones over there is a real redneck. Okay, that could be a violation. That could be a grievable offense. That could be a letter that you get from the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel that you have violated if it's adopted 804. So I just want you to be aware of some of these situations that are now being talked about by the bar. And that's not as far-fetched as you think. Next. Settlement authority. This is a new rule that allows the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel at any step along the process to try to work out a settlement with the party who's been charged. We're also establishing minimum standards and procedures, and so that we try to have some uniformity of all sentences, whether you're in Weslaco, the Panhandle, or Brownwood. We now have, and this is an interesting concept, we now have an ombudsman, and it happens to be an attorney that I believe is over in the state bar, and this person will review grievances, receive complaints about the system, receive and investigate complaints, answer questions from the public, assist members of the public wishing to submit a lawyer grievance. So now we've put in place a person to help our clients file grievances against us. This again grew out of the problems with the state legislature, and the bar kind of bent over backwards and said, well, we'll even put an ombudsman in place to help people file grievances against our members. I really have not seen this in action. I've called this person, talked to them generally about what they do. Seems like a reasonable person, but I'm just questioning the need that we really need our bar dues going to the ombudsman to help somebody file grievances against us. Maybe so. Barratry. Everybody knows what barratry is, the illegal solicitation of cases. They want the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel to coordinate more with local law enforcement, federal and state. If there is a barratry charge, I think this is sort of a housekeeping procedure, and keep information about that. You also have self-reporting. If you charge with criminal offense in any area, state, in the union, you're supposed to report that yourself. We now have a National Lawyer Data Bank. I think some of you may be familiar with the federal data bank that deals with doctors. We're now having this with attorneys, and this is a new event. Online attorney profiles must now include a link on the attorney's online profile to the full text of disciplinary judgment entered by a district court, district grievance committee, or district court. So we want to be sure that the public knows what you've done if you've done something wrong. These are the guidelines to follow and make sure that we have uniformity with our sentencing throughout the state. We're now allowed to do investigative and disciplinary hearings by teleconference. The investigative hearing is a new weapon that the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel can use to further investigate whether a grievance has been committed or not. And we're seeing more of those, and how you cooperate and the means of cooperation, and whether you should cooperate or not is an issue that we're dealing with right now. The committee conducting this investigation can issue subpoenas, can issue a subpoena for your financial records, and it's very difficult to have that quashed. And if you don't have the records, I guess that'd be one thing. If you do have the records, you're probably going to have to produce them. We do allow now to keep finger-based fingerprints of all attorneys in the state of Texas. I don't remember when I started practicing many years ago, that wasn't required, but it is required now. Again, just in summary, I want to talk about going back again on the evidentiary hearing. It's the only place where you can get a private reprimand. The rules are somewhat relaxed in an evidentiary hearing. In a civil jury trial, the civil rules of procedure are followed, and there's no private reprimand. If there's one fix I would suggest that the committee look into, it's this, that you should have a private reprimand, both if you go to civil and if you go to an evidentiary hearing. And my screen has changed a little bit. Let me see what has happened there. Okay, so now we're going to just look really statistics so you understand in 2017, what areas are more susceptible to having a grievance filed against you. Generally speaking, traffic tickets are not high on the list. Some reason my screen keeps jumping around and I'm not touching anything, but I will keep going no matter what. Okay, these are the violations by percentages. Integrity deals with bar admission is really one of the largest segments when we have people that falsify information. It doesn't really apply to practicing attorneys like you, but these are some issues that do come up. Always the issue comes up of reporting a professional misconduct. That's a very subjective test, whether you should do that. Very few grievances are ever brought against an attorney for failing to report, but that is a violation. I'm going to go on here and just keep with me. This is an area that I want to talk about a little bit, declining or terminating representation. One of the big areas that we touch on from time to time is what to do with the file and who owns the file. And one of the things that I have come across, and I don't have ownership in this software package, but an organization that puts out a thing called My Case. That's an online program. And the reason I like that and tied into terminating and declining representation is that file, once it's in the cloud and once you have access to it, and once the client has access to it, it's permanently there. And you can deny access to the client. But at the time you're finishing up with a case, and again, doing traffic tickets, I know that it's you don't keep extensive files, but at least have the basic information on the client on that computer system, so that if that client wants to see something, you're able to show them something, as opposed to having that ticket and just throw it away. So some of you have more sophisticated programs than others, but the client owns the file, and whatever that file is, and if it's kept on in the cloud or kept on a program like this, it's easier to maintain, easier to give them access, and you will see what they will see, they see what you see, and there's not a problem with returning the file to them, okay? Safeguarding property, responsive trust account management, safeguarding if obviously if they give you a wedding ring, if they give you something like that, that is an item that if you don't return it or there's an issue about that, that certainly will get you in hot water with the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel. Conflicts of interest, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. I think you know, if you've represented somebody and there's a conflict with that person coming back with another client, that's the reason you need to have a ledger, you need to have a list of your clients to make sure that there isn't a conflict with this. Illegal fees or unconscionable fees, really this falls more into the division of a fee, and that's really not the purpose of this talk. I'm happy to get into that, or if you have a question about that, to answer that. But generally, you have very few grievable offenses with this violation of fees. Advertising solicitation. This has become a little bit more active, and I see some grievances filed about this. Obviously, the best way to protect yourself is to contact the State Bar of Texas Advertising Review Committee. You send your video in, you send your advertising in. I think the charge now $75, $100, but once you get the premature from them, you're home safe. Tribunals, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. This is a violation, making false statements to others, but that less than 1%. Okay, in 2016, 2017, we had over 2,000 grievances filed, 545 evidentiary hearings, 343 sanctions, and you can see how those worked out between 30 public reprimands and 50 grievance referral program. Generally, if the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel can put you into the grievance referral program, they will try to do that. Again, this will be up and you can copy it down and get more information about these protections. I put up here, this is State Bar of Texas Ethics Hotline. Write it down, 1-800-532-3947. Let me repeat that, 1-800-532-3947. We have a committee that issues written opinions. Unfortunately, that takes a long time. Be familiar with the advertising rules. You can become familiar with advertising rules by contacting the State Bar of Texas Advertising Review Committee and asking them. Obviously, keep client files. Generally, in trust areas, I've heard that it's a 4-year. Generally speaking, especially if you have a program that allows you to close the file and you always have that with you in the cloud, then that's probably the best way to do it. The same thing with these programs that on my case, I keep track of all telephone calls and other records can be maintained, documents, etc., with that program. Keep your client fully informed, phone call promptly, do not engage in sex with the client. If you do get into a fee dispute, depending on the amount, there is in Houston, the Harris County Dispute Resolution Committee, which I think usually tries to do a good job, trains staff, bar resources, substance abuse, maintain professional relationships. We're getting now to the end of this. You got to take it seriously. If you're going to make a response to a complaint that's been filed, make it as complete, as full a response as you can. We've used experts, we've used depositions, we've used signed statements to try to make sure it does not go further into the system. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit, and we're getting ready to play this video on TLAP. One of the reasons I got involved with TLAP, and I'm a Harris County attorney, is that 3 years ago, I had 5 friends commit suicide. And I wanted to do something about that. And so Joe Longley appointed me to the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. And we're going to see a video in just a minute about it. But the major problems for attorneys, as you know, is stress, anxiety, depression, alcohol, substance abuse, cognitive impairment. I want to say that this slide, we've kind of touched on that, but I want to go into right here. This is somewhat of another issue that attorneys suffer from, and that's secondary trauma. You have threats from criminal defendants. You see a client lose custody matter, being yelled at by a client, dealing in PI and in traffic tickets. You see some horrible things. And that secondary trauma can almost be as devastating as actual trauma. TLAP and again, Texas Lawyers Assistance Program, I can't emphasize enough, and I'll keep emphasizing that anytime you call them, call the 800 number, it's totally confidential. You can call them for somebody else. You can call them to request in the right circumstances an intervention. There are trained professionals to handle all sorts of calls. There are TLAP and lawyers concerned about lawyers, meetings that you can attend by Zoom, attend by phone call. One-on-one peer support is available. There's a number of videos on the TLAP website, and there's certainly service opportunities. This is your staff. This is where your money goes to help support TLAP. Chris Ritter is an attorney who's gone through recovery, is an attorney that got a master's degree in education, is the head honcho of TLAP and does a fabulous job. As far as I'm concerned, I wish we could duplicate Chris because he has so many demands on his time and does such a good job. Shauna is a licensed therapist who is also available and does an excellent job on presentations. Erica Grigg is an Austin attorney who went through recovery, tells her story, helps others with their story, and is available to talk. And Penny runs the whole place and is a great administrative assistant. Take it seriously, prepare a thorough response. These are the ethics hotlines. There's the Texas Center for Legal Ethics, Houston, other sites on this, including if you really want to get into some of the nitty gritty of ethics rulings, there's the Cornell University site. And final thought, I'm going to do one other thing here. We've talked about 804. I may come back to that. Are y'all ready now to show the video, the TLAP video? Can you hear me? So we're going to go now and watch this video, and I'll come back after that. So I'm waiting for the video to play, and while we're getting this up and running, this was made by Texas Lawyers Assistance Program and may actually be some people that you know. So
practicing law in Texas is challenging,
exciting,
important, meaningful,
rewarding,
adventurous, giving, heroic,
helping.
Helping others is what brought many of us to the practice of law.
But most attorneys don't know how to help themselves.
Lawyers need help because practicing law can also be
difficult, time-consuming,
Intense,
consequential,
traumatic,
serious,
exhausting,
stressful,
overwhelming.
Many lawyers will face challenges that will affect their mental health.
46% of attorneys deal with depression at some point in their practice.
28% currently suffer from depression.
Attorneys also struggle with trying to self-medicate these stresses.
21% of attorneys are serious problem drinkers.
32% of attorneys 30 and under have a drinking problem.
When we suffer from anxiety, depression, or other problems, we can't do our best for our clients.
And we can't be the person we want to be for our community and family.
We're here to send a strong message to our legal community that it's time that we recognize one thing. It's good to get help.
Getting help is a big deal, whether it's getting help from a therapist, like many of us have done, or getting other kinds of professional treatment.
Or getting connected to a 12-step group or a Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers support group.
Finding a peer who has been through what you're going through is tremendous.
Getting help can provide you peace of mind,
joy, healthy boundaries,
recovery,
a process to overcome grief and depression,
connection to others,
resilience,
support,
encouragement,
motivation,
happiness.
Getting help is a big deal. I've gotten it, and I am proud to stand for this message. Getting help has changed my life and made me the lawyer I am today.
Getting help allowed me to stop wasting time stuck in my head and get things done.
Getting help to stop drinking has changed my life.
Getting help has allowed me to process grief.
Getting help allowed me to manage stress.
Getting help has given me a new outlook on practicing law.
Getting help has filled me back up so I can continue to help others in my practice.
Getting help has allowed me to find recovery.
Getting help enabled me to quit drinking so I could be there for my dad.
The Board of Law Examiners and the Chief Disciplinary Council in Texas agree.
It's good to get help. Getting help shows that a person is taking care of him or herself.
It's good to get help. We don't want to lose more members of our law family to suicide.
TLAP is able to connect lawyers, law students, and judges to many resources and can even help them get funding through the Sheeran Crowley Trust for Mental Health and Substance Use Care.
Not only do we want to encourage lawyers to get help, we want Texas law students to know from the outset that getting help is a good thing.
What we learn in law school matters, and learning to get help when it is needed is fundamental to becoming a good lawyer.
Getting help isn't something we should be ashamed of.
It's something we tell our clients to do every day.
Lawyers and law students aren't usually trained in how to manage mental health.
Why would we think we can solve those problems alone? It's good to get help.
For a profession that carries the worst burdens of our clients every day, practicing law can become overwhelming. We need to fill up, and we need to know how.
We did, and we urge you to do the same. Without shame, it's good to get help.
Okay, so I think I'm back up now, and then kind of concluding this part. What we did is to go over some of the grievance procedures so you'll be familiar with them. I think the most important point that I want to make is that if you do get a letter from our friends at the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel, you try to have some other attorney, you talk to some other attorney about it. I'm always happy to with no charge, talk to an attorney about that letter and then see where it goes from there. There's other resources, including the hotline. I can't emphasize enough, and my good friend Steve Fisher has actually made a proposal that deals with the fact that too many attorneys take that letter, stick it in a drawer, and forget about it, and they just freak out. And there may be some way we can address that issue, but that's not for this talk. But the point is, if you do receive, or you think you're going to get a complaint, or you have that client that you think that is going to file some complaint against you, don't just throw it away. Talk to somebody. There are a lot of resources. Talk to TLAP, talk to lawyers concerned with lawyers, and do something about that. And then we went into the services that TLAP provides. There's money for medication, there's money for rehab, there's money for counselors. There's groups that meet every week. You can tune in and be part of an organization that talks. You can call in and find out other people involved in that. And so that would be another way to do it, to get connected. Finally, I just want you to be aware of, you may be seeing something come along about 804 and how that rule may change how we view professional misconduct. So with that, I'm going to hang around. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be at the end of the talk or anytime the questions are asked. And thank you for having me. And if you're in Houston sometime, we may even find a restaurant with our mask and social distancing that we can have a cup of coffee. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We very much appreciate your presentation. For those that would like to address questions directly to Mr. Bennett, he can be reached at his email address, which is bob@bennettLawFirm.com. That's BENNETT lawfirm.com, and on his website at BennettLawFirm.com. And we appreciate your presentation, Mr. Bennett. As a reminder, the resources identified in Bob's materials are available online at TLAP Helps, that's all one word, TLAPHELPS.org, and at the State Bar of Texas Office of Disciplinary Counsel online. Bill Pewitt acted as legislative lobbyist and liaison for the Traffic Lawyers of Texas Bar Association from our inception, and after 27 years, Mr. Pewitt retired from his position as our lobbyist last year in 2019. We are very excited to establish a new relationship with the Texas Star Alliance. Eric Newstrom serves as legislative counsel for Texas Star Alliance. Eric has more than 20 years of legal experience ranging from litigation to legislative drafting. Eric is an expert in legislative drafting and research and works with legislators, stakeholders, and legislative counsel to craft meaningful legislation to bring policy into practice. And as all of you well know, Texas is every other year legislative assembly meeting, and we are in a legislative year. And at this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Newstrom. Eric, the floor is yours.
There we go. Hello. Y'all should see me in just a moment. Hi, my name is Eric Newstrom. I'm a principal at Texas Star Alliance. Thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself and my primary practice partner, our group, and then a little bit about what we think the 86th session of the legislature will look like this coming January. I went to the University of Texas School of Law, graduated in 2001. Immediately afterward, I went to work for LexisNexis. So some of you watching this, I may have been your Lexis rep. I had no gray hair then and didn't have a beard, so I might look a little different. After working for LexisNexis for 10 years, I had a career for a few years working in discovery services with electronic discovery, and then found my way to the Texas legislature about 8 years ago. I began working with Texas Star Alliance 6 years ago, and since then I've been representing clients and working with the legislature. My primary practice partner and your other main contact at Texas Star Alliance is Chad Cantella. Chad has been a principal with Texas Star Alliance since it was formed, and he has roughly 30 years of experience in Texas politics. He was a campaign strategist for the first 18 or so years of his career, and then he became a government affairs professional. And our experience in practice ranges from healthcare issues to education to criminal justice, law enforcement. We even do a little bit of work on elections and ethics laws. We're excited to be working for the traffic lawyers. We interact regularly with the stakeholders in your area. We spend a lot of time in the committees where the issues that will directly affect you and your issues come up. So we think we're a very good match for the issues that y'all will be addressing. Texas Star Alliance overall is a firm of 17 principal lobbyists and 3 associates at this time. We function a lot like a law firm. Each principal or partner, to use law firm terms, has their own practice and focuses on the needs of their clients. However, as a group, we do fundraising, we do campaign meetings. We are completely bipartisan and agnostic when it comes to party. We do work with every single office. Some of our principals have worked for members of the legislature, some have been members of the legislature. But when it comes to politics, our main priority is to address the needs of our clients and advance their desires. The benefit of our activity, though, is that we give to campaigns and to candidates as members of Texas Star Alliance. So when you retain someone from Texas Star Alliance, you get the benefit of the dollars that we use to support candidates and campaigns throughout the election season. And as much as you hate to say it, that is part of the equation of getting to see people and part of the way that the system works. So that's a little bit about us. And I thought what I'd tell you about next is what our marching orders are from the group and from your leaders, and then what I think we could expect from the coming session. Primarily what we'll be doing for y'all is monitoring the legislature, meeting with other stakeholders, and trying to understand what the landscape will be for bills and policy changes that could potentially affect your practice as session goes forward. We've already identified a couple measures that members are talking about filing and having bills on the table that will affect you. And what we'll do when session starts is make sure that we're tracking those bills, informing your board and having them let you know what's going on. And then when the bills start to move, we will make sure that you're in the right positions to testify on them, to advocate with members. If it's a bill that you like and you would like to see advance, we'll make sure that you meet with the members of the committee that will get it to the floor of both the House and the Senate. And if it's one that we think is bad legislation that shouldn't advance, we'll do the same to make sure that it doesn't go forward. Before the pandemic struck, people had already dubbed the 86th legislative session as the criminal justice reform session. There was quite a bit of momentum behind federal criminal justice reform from the current administration, aided by celebrities. And the First Step Act was very much a product of a Texas-based policy group, Texas Public Policy Foundation, and their Right on Crime project. Now, that group has turned their attention to state criminal justice reform, and much of what they will be doing this session will be focused on Texas and Texas policy. And as part of that, there will be many, many proposals that will either directly or tangentially relate to the practice of law in municipal courts, and definitely to traffic lawyers practicing in Texas. So we have kept our ear to the ground, and we will begin immediately sending reports to our contacts with your group so that they can inform you of what's going on, and if necessary, motivate members in given districts to influence the key members of the legislature on those legislative matters, so that we are ahead of the curve when it comes time to have a hearing in a committee. Until then, our job will simply be to make sure that we're staying in touch with legislators, their staff, and stakeholders. That includes associations, advocates groups, and then the large public policy foundations. But that job has been made a little harder with the pandemic. At this point, we'd normally be in the building a lot, talking to members and talking to their staff. The Capitol is still closed. All meetings are happening over Zoom. And so we're spending a lot of the time in front of our computers. We're spending a lot of the time on the phone talking to people about what their plans are and how exactly session will go. There's been a document that was drafted by a longtime Capitol staffer and insider that was shared through Quorum Report, which is sort of a media outlet that's targeted at the Capitol crowd, that I will share with your folks to forward around and attached to this CLE, that gives a very, very accurate picture of what everyone thinks this session will look like. During a normal session, you have public access to the Capitol. People come and go. People can come to committee rooms and sit all day waiting to testify. The picture for the 86th legislative session looks very different. Testifying will be difficult. PPE will be required. And so we just want to make sure that anybody who comes to the Capitol to advocate on y'all's behalf is completely prepared and understands what to expect. So that's a little bit about us. We have a website. It's www.texasstaralliance.com. I invite y'all to take a look at it, to take a look at some of the white papers we've written. Obviously, my contact information is there if you want to shoot me an email and ask me any specific questions. But other than that, we stand ready to advocate on your behalf and to make sure that only good policy comes out of the 86th legislative session that will affect the traffic lawyers of Texas. Justin, unless there's any questions.
No, I do not see any questions. We very much look forward to working with you now and into the future. And we also are excited to see you in person in Austin this coming January.
Excellent.
Our final presentation today will be from Caroline Ortego and Addie Wayland, and we'll focus on identifying and effectively mitigating the unique personal and professional stresses related to the COVID-19 outbreak. Caroline Ortego is the owner and sole attorney of the Ortego Law Firm, PLLC, and has been practicing estate planning and probate for the past 10 years. She is experienced in end-of-life planning services and has extensive experience with the Texas Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. Caroline regularly serves as an attorney ad litem in heirship, guardianship, and tax foreclosure proceedings. Addie Wayland is a licensed clinical social worker board-approved supervisor and is the owner and counselor of Everyday Bravery Counseling, an online private practice working with adults who have experienced trauma and those who struggle with shame, perfectionism, and poor self-worth. Ladies, the floor is yours.
I don't see our PowerPoint up, but oh, there it is. I think it's coming up. Here it is.
Can you guys, I don't think you can see me.
Yeah, I can see you.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much to the Traffic Lawyers of Texas for having us today for this presentation. The inspiration for this presentation was my experience with my clients this year. I'm used to doing a lot of counseling with what I do, but this year it's increased dramatically since we've all been home and isolated. And I reached out to my Facebook attorney friends and I said, is anybody else experiencing this? And are you spending more time as a counselor / therapist than you are an actual practicing attorney, does it feel like? And people came back with referring me to Addie Wayland, the licensed therapist who's going to give our main presentation today. She specializes in grief, trauma, burnout, and compassion fatigue. And those are all things that I feel like are in my life right now. Grief for the life I used to have, the trauma of my clients and my family members, and burnout and compassion fatigue for sure. So I've met with Addie on Zoom, as we do now, and at first I started talking about how I could be a better attorney, how I could better help my clients that seem to be having trouble making decisions and responding to me. And the more I talked, the more I realized, what about myself? You know, this is a global pandemic. It's affecting everyone, just like Harvey affected us regionally as a whole. COVID-19 is affecting everybody. Nobody's getting out without damage. And my life is completely different than it was before mid-March. And I'm having stress and confusion as well. And I'm used to being the helper as the attorney. I'm the professional. I'm there. I'm being paid to be objective and to make recommendations and to carry things out. But what happens when the helper needs help and we're now the helpee? So that's what our talk is about today. And I'm really grateful to Addie because she's going to help us better understand what's going on with us and what's going on with our clients. And she's going to give us some strategies to succeed. And just a couple of examples from myself. How have I dealt with the stress of this experience? And one of those things is Facebook. I've used a lot more to reach out, make new friends with attorneys, revitalize old relationships with friends from the past. And more important than that, I've learned a lot more about compassion and forgiveness for myself for not being perfect. You know, a lot of us in this profession hold ourselves to a very high standard, as we should. But what happens when things are going on around us and we really can't do that? And I think what we can do is forgive ourselves and be compassionate for ourselves. So with that said, I'm going to give the presentation over to Addie Wayland, and she's going to give us some strategies. Thanks.
Thank you, Caroline, for that introduction. Hi, guys. I'm so excited to be here. So as she said, my name is Addie Wieland, and I have been in this field for about 10 years now. Most of my experience, expertise, training all lies within trauma. I worked a lot in trauma in my previous jobs, and with my clients now, I work a lot with trauma. And of course, with trauma comes a lot of struggles with self-worth, grief, all the things that we kind of already talked about. On a more personal level, my connection to the attorney world is my mom is actually an attorney. She started off as a defense attorney and then moved on to insurance and then moved on to immigration, which talk about burnout and compassion fatigue. That is a tough job. Now she is a happily retired grandma. So she likes that job much better sometimes. So yeah, I was just going to talk to you guys a little bit about COVID stress and what that looks like. So I'm going to start the presentation. Let me make sure that I can change the slide. Sometimes it takes a minute. There you go. I'm going to start the presentation just by laying out some of the things that maybe you guys have been experiencing right now. So just take a look at that list and see if you guys can see yourself, you know, with any of these check boxes. No need to raise your hand or anything. But yeah, I think a lot of us, or all of us, have been experiencing a lot of these things. I know people have really talked about COVID, that it's kind of like a wave, right? Comes in waves. And that in the beginning, I feel like we were kind of confused, like what's really going on? Is this really happening? Is this the twilight zone? Like we were way off balance. I can remember specifically going to HEB for the first time, you know, and everybody was wearing masks and gloves and the shields. And I was like, this is like the most bizarre thing, you know, just to see it in person. So with that, we've been experiencing a lot of these symptoms, and a lot of these symptoms are related to like PTSD and trauma and people that have experienced a lot of trauma, because really what we're experiencing is kind of a collective traumatic experience. And the really unique thing about this situation that I've found, and I'm sure you guys have also found with your clients, is that never in my career have I been in the same boat at the same time with my clients. Now, I will say, not the exact same boat, right? Because we know that COVID affects people very differently, obviously very much affects minorities and the elderly and immune compromised and all those things. And different industries are being affected differently too, right? So not necessarily the exact same boat, but a very similar boat. And I can remember when COVID first kind of hit, and I was trying to like hold space for my clients and do all the good things that I'm really good at. You know, I have truly been felt called to my profession. I've known kind of from day one when I was younger that I wanted to be a counselor and help people. And never have I ever questioned my career, ever. Until COVID, seriously. I remember going to my husband and just telling him like, man, how am I supposed to hold space for all these people when I can't even hold space for myself? You know, I can't even really help myself right now. How am I supposed to help kind of all these people that were going through this similar struggle together? And I remember laughing and telling him like, I really wish like right now I just worked in numbers. Like just don't take away all the emotions. I just wish I worked in numbers. But truly, it's just a very bizarre, almost remarkable time for people to be experiencing very similar things that their clients are experiencing at the exact same time, which can look like a lot of these symptoms right here. And I think kind of to speak with what Caroline was talking about, the important thing is, I think when we think about kind of all of these symptoms and the things that we're experiencing with COVID, is yeah, just to kind of give ourselves a little grace, right? To kind of be able to work through this big pandemic. So you're asking like, how do we do that? I'm gonna go next slide. Okay, so this is the arousal continuum. I am super into the brain. That's like another kind of passion subject for me. Done a whole lot of training about interpersonal neurobiology, which is kind of a connection between the brain and therapy, and really into like neuroscience and learning all about the brain. It's like my jam. I could go on a slide forever, so I will try to keep it concise. So this is the arousal continuum. it's based off the work of Dr. Perry, who is a world-renowned child psychiatrist in the world of child trauma. And he kind of came up with this, although there's other models that are very, very similar. I just like to use this one. I show this to all of my clients because it pertains to all of us, really, not just people who have experienced trauma, but all of us, but specifically people who have experienced trauma. This is really, really important. So what this is, these 5 states, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but these we're in on this planet are in these 5 states 24 hours a day. So it's calm, alert, alarm, afraid. And really with afraid, there's kind of like fear and terror. So there's kind of more states, but this is a simplified version of it. Hopefully you can still hear me because my internet connection is unstable. But when we are in calm, as you can see up here, our thinking is very creative, analytical, and we're really our best selves. This is when we have full access of this front part of the brain, which that frontal lobe, and if any of you guys are really into neuroscience, this is a very simplified version, so don't be like, it's way more complicated than that. Totally way more complicated than this, but simplifying it because the brain's very complicated. So when we're in calm, we have full access to this frontal cortex. That frontal cortex is the last to develop. It doesn't develop until we're 25. It's the part that we're able to have a lot of forward thinking. So we're able to think, maybe we shouldn't eat like the whole bowl of ice cream because we'll be sick later, right? We're able to communicate with that frontal cortex. We're able just to make really, really good decisions. And really when we're calm, we're our absolute best self, honestly. We have really good ideas. That's why a lot of people maybe have really good ideas when they're in the shower. Is typically when we're in the shower, we're pretty calm and we have good ideas. Typically outside of COVID, since COVID has now kind of turned our house into something different than it normally was, we are calm when we're at home. If home is a safe place, which we know that for not everybody, home is a safe place, but if home is a safe place for you before COVID, you probably were able to be calm there, relax, kind of get that calm state. Now with COVID, it's even harder to kind of access that calm because home isn't necessarily a safe place, right? Home is where we work. Maybe it's where we homeschool our kids. Don't even get me started on that topic. Home is just lots of different things for us right now. So it might not be the safest place right now. And really to access that calm, it might be a specific place in your house, right? So maybe the bathtub, maybe your bed, maybe outside, that might be able to access calm. But really it's changed. Usually we can feel calm when we're at home, and that looks differently now. When we move down the continuum, so when we go out and about on our day, go to work, do certain things, we move more into that alert. So our thinking is a little bit more concrete, and because we can't just totally be like Zen when we're out and about, right? We have to kind of be paying attention, doing all these things. It gets more alert. For the majority of people, normally pre-COVID, you would spend most of your time in alert, unless you have experiences of trauma, which I'm really not going to get into today. But that would kind of be your baseline, would be alert. Access and calm when you're home. Then, I forgot to say, it takes seconds to kind of move down the continuum. So if you think about like a near car accident when you're driving your car down the road and you almost run into somebody, it takes seconds to move down to like that afraid, that fear, terror, like, oh my God, I almost got in a car accident, like freaking out. And then it takes a much longer time to get back to calm. So usually it's not like seconds and you're back at calm, right? It takes maybe your whole car ride home sometimes to like access calm and feel calm and like relax and all that good stuff. So seconds to go down, it takes a while to come back up is important to remember. And we kind of move up and down the continuum based on things that are happening in our environment. And right now, normally, things that might not trigger us are probably even more triggering now because of COVID. So we might be moving down the continuum more often than not, just because of everything that's going on right now. And I would venture to say that a lot of our baseline is not really alert anymore, but kind of more that alarm state, and maybe between alert and alarm, because of everything that's going on, and we just can't catch our balance. We can't access calm as much as we can, right? So when we're in that afraid state, our thinking is on reflex. We have really no access or very limited access to our thinking brain, and we're fully back in the brainstem. The brainstem is a very, very important part of the brain, but it's not very sophisticated. Really, with our brainstem, it helps us control these autonomic, I always have trouble saying that, automatic systems like our breathing, our heart rate, our blood flow, but it doesn't really have any forward thinking. It has no forward thinking at all. It thinks in seconds. So it does things very, very impulsively. We cannot communicate in our brainstem, so we really can't talk to people when we're in our brainstem. We have absolutely no access to reason when we're in our brainstem. So when we're in our brainstem, we're really not our best at all. And as you can see, our IQ goes down dramatically from our IQ when we're in calm. When we're in our brainstem, we tend to do things that we normally wouldn't do, maybe like go on a shopping spree in Amazon with a credit card, even though we're not supposed to. Say things that we don't need. This is when we snap at our kids, snap at our husbands, partner wives, all those things. We just typically are really, really not our best selves when we're in that back part of the brain. And the more that we stay there, the harder that it is to come out. So normally we're supposed to kind of move in between the states naturally, right? Like we're going about our day, we start at calm, we get more alert when we're on our way to work, maybe something happens, pushes us to alarm, we get more alert, all of that kind of stuff. We kind of move up and down. The tricky part with COVID, which I'm going to show you guys in the next slide, is that it's just hard to access that calm like I was talking about. So we typically tend to stay a lot in those lower states, which basically we're just not really our best self in those states, right? And it's kind of like a mindset switching from living to more kind of that survival mode. So a really huge thing is just to practice lowering our expectations when we're kind of in these modes. And one quick thing you might be asking, how do I know which state that I'm in? Like, how will I know exactly? The best and easiest way to know is to get connected to your body. Your body is always going to tell you first, because our body knows first before our mind can catch up. And a really good example of that is when we're about to touch or we touch something hot and our hand recoils instantly really quickly before our mind says like, hey dummy, don't touch that, right? It's hot. Our body is going to tell us. So a really good exercise that I have a lot of my clients do is, hey, just map out your body, how your body feels in each of these states. So when you're calm, what do you kind of notice about your body, right? Probably your shoulders are a lot more relaxed, your face is not as scrunched, your breathing is normal or even like very deep breathing. You'll really know how your body feels. Maybe alert. In between the states, there's going to be probably small nuances between that in terms of how your body feels. But definitely between calm and afraid, you're going to know, right? Your heart rate's going to be super, super fast. Your breathing's going to be shallow, or you might be holding your breath. You'll definitely know by paying attention to your body when you're in that afraid state versus that calm state. And so just kind of getting more in tune to your body is going to help you figure out which state you're in. So that's a really good exercise to kind of help you figure that out. And I'll talk more about the body in a little bit. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. That's kind of just a really quick way about the arousal continuum. And what I was talking about in terms of COVID and why it feels a little bit different is because of this. This is also another slide from Dr. Bruce Perry. He talks a lot about this. So stress is normally sort of a good thing when it comes to how much it is, how intense it is, and how much we get breaks in between, right? So normal everyday stress that you might experience at work, at home, that's pretty predictable, pretty moderate, pretty like bite size that you can manage. That helps push us, right? That helps motivate us to like get things done. That helps encourage us. It can be a good thing in small doses. So it can kind of lead to resiliency. But when we come to the stress that we're all kind of experiencing right now because of COVID and all of the aspects of our life that it's affecting, financial, physical, emotional, mental, everything. it's very, and talk about unpredictable, right? Like in terms of, we don't know when it's going to end, and so many different questions, no end in sight, pretty severe stress, it's constant. That is what leads to a lot of vulnerability, and our bodies are not made to be in that afraid state for long. We're just not built for that. And if we are in that afraid state for long, what happens, and you might be noticing this yourself, is that our body tends to shut down in order to protect us, because it has to like conserve energy somehow, right? It cannot go at that state of alarm for so long. So this can look like, I feel like a lot of us might be in this state right now because we're just over it, right? We're just over all of it. But it can feel a lot like apathy, numbing, overwhelmed, despair, just a whole lot of numbing I feel like is happening right now for sure. And numbing just can be with anything. It doesn't have to be with alcohol and drugs. It can be with work. It can be with Netflix. It can be with ice cream. It can be really with anything with excess, was what we kind of like numb, where we don't focus so much on our feelings and just kind of numb our feelings and pretend that nothing's happening. So that is why COVID feels different than maybe normal everyday stress, even like intense stress, because typically that has like an end point, and we've been in it for a long time with not a real end point in sight. So I think that is why COVID feels very differently right now. So then you're like, great, Addie, I'm afraid. What do I do now? What do I do to kind of help myself access that calm? I'm going to tell you. So if you forget everything that I talk about today, I really, really hope that one thing you take from this is the 3 R's, which is another Dr. Bruce Perry thing. He really talks about this a lot. I use this all the time in session with myself, everybody. So the 3 R's are regulate, relate, and reason. And when we are in that afraid state, we want to do things in sequence. So we want to regulate ourselves first before we can kind of relate to ourselves. And I'm not going to go too much into relate and reason because I don't have a whole lot of time. But relating is more about being kind to ourselves, kind of what Carolina was talking about, being self-compassionate to ourselves. If you're interested in that, I'm actually doing a 4-part series on self-compassion on my Facebook page, but I'm not going to go into that today. But relate is being more kind to ourselves. Relate is being able to connect with others. And then reason, of course, is just, reasoning with ourselves and with others. But we cannot do those 2 things when we're in our brainstem. So when we're in our brainstem, the only kind of thing that it understands at that time when we're in that afraid state, fear and terror, is regulation. The brainstem does not care, does not give 2, about reason. It just doesn't. It just doesn't care about reason. So if you've ever experienced a panic attack or even really, really strong anxiety, which we're probably all feeling right now, you probably can relate to this. So when you're in that, when you're having a panic attack or high anxiety, and if somebody's around you or if you're by yourself, typically what people try to do, because they're not aware of this, which is totally fine. When we know better, we do better, right? Is they try to reason. If somebody else is with you, they're going to try to reason with you, or you're going to try to reason with yourself when you're in full-blown panic. So somebody with you might say like, hey, like, it's okay. Like, just, it's fine. Whatever the situation is, there's more fish in the sea if it's about a breakup, or you can get another job, or it's all right. Like, they'll start trying to fix it, right? Trying to help you reason, trying to help you rationalize all of those things, which is great and definitely has its place for sure, but not at that time, because the brainstem, does not sink in at that time. The brainstem, I don't know if I'm dating myself here, but it's like the Charlie Brown adults, right? That's all the brainstem hears when a person or you are trying to reason with yourself. It is not sinking in. The brainstem does not understand language. And you can even, if you guys have toddlers, I have a toddler. So if you have toddlers, you know this because when they're throwing that full-blown tantrum and you're trying to like talk to them, guys, just stop. It's not sinking in, right? We have to kind of regulate them first. It's the same thing because we're kind of in our toddler brain when we're in our brainstem. So brainstem does not understand reason, which means we cannot reason with ourselves or others can't reason with us when we're in that state to help get us access to calm. What it does understand is regulation. And so you might be saying, well, what the heck is regulation? Regulation is super, super simple, very simple. You guys are gonna be like, are you serious? Anything that is rhythmic and repetitive is gonna be regulating and soothing to us. So anytime you can bring rhythm into your life, it's going to be helpful for you. And you probably already do without you knowing it, because we naturally kind of just lean towards those more rhythmic things. And you might be asking, well, why is rhythm, I don't understand, like, why is rhythm so important? And this is just a total tidbit aside because I think it's so fascinating. But the reason that rhythm is so important is it has to do with when we were in our mother's womb. That's where we all started, right? When we're in our mother's womb, that's the safest place we'll ever be. We were the perfect temperature. We were not hungry, right? Because we're constantly being fed by the I would say tube, but the cord. And so pretty much that was like nirvana. We'll never get back to that. So we were in literally a perfect state when we're in utero. And we're not alone because we can hear our mother's voices or other voices around us. So that feeling of safety, security, all of that stuff is paired with what constant sound? 24 hours. The heartbeat, right? So the heartbeat kind of connects safety, connection, all of that stuff with the rhythm of the heartbeat. So rhythm will always be safe to us, will always be comforting to us. And that can look as simple as deep breathing, which I know you guys are gonna be like, guys, come on, how many deep breathing things can you tell us? But seriously, deep breathing is very scientific. And the reason that it's so helpful when you're in the brainstem is because remember I talked about that the brainstem controls your automatic functions, which is like your blood flow, your heart rate, and your breathing. So the only one that you can control is your breathing. So that's why breathing can be super, super helpful. And deep breaths, right, just look like that. Kind of pausing and then blowing it out. Lots of deep breathing techniques. Probably can't practice one today, but there's lots of ones to kind of breathe in, breathe out. So deep breathing is a good one. Just walking, running, singing, dancing, swaying, rocking on a rocking chair, humming. Any of those rhythmic activities are going to be helpful when you're in that brainstem. Don't complicate it, guys. Just do something rhythmic and repetitive. And if you're in full-blown kind of terror, know that, okay, you can't just do like 2 minutes of breathing and you'll be good and calm. Remember, it takes seconds to go down, it takes a while to come back up. So give it time, give it a good 20 minutes of any regulating activity. Also, kind of caveat to know is that when you're in that brainstem, the tricky thing is that you are not going to have access to this front part. So you can't just say, oh, wait, what did Addie tell me to do when I'm in this part? Like, I needed to breathe. Like, that's not gonna happen. So the more you can do it outside of afraid, like when you're in a calm and alert, build that routine of bringing rhythm into your life, the more you're gonna reach for it when you need it and you're in your brainstem. So it's important to do it outside of being afraid, being when you're in that afraid state as well. It's kind of like we wouldn't throw a kid into the deep end and expect them to swim. Same thing. My mentor also says, we can't expect somebody to sink a 3-point shot if they've never been practicing 3-point shots. So like sink a 3-point shot at the buzzer, never been practicing 3-point shots. So important to do the regulation outside of it too. So regulate is the main thing that I would send for you guys. Yoga, stretching, any of those things that's rhythmic and repetitive and that doesn't involve language is gonna help regulate you. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, can't go too much into relate and reason, but once you feel more regulated, which you'll tell from your body, your heart rate's down, then you can more relate and then you can more, reason with yourself in that sense. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so me and Caroline were kind of talking about this and they were actually talking about it a lot in the TLAP, I think that's what it's called, video that Bob was showing earlier, which I had never heard of that organization. It sounds awesome. So I love that you guys have that resource. I just wanted to throw this in here because knowing that my mom is an attorney and also struggled with this herself, so I can kind of know, and not to put you guys all in a box that you all struggle, but I just know that it is a profession where it's not helpful for you to show your weakness in the courtroom, right? When you're dealing with these really intense situations, like that's not helpful for you to show a lot of weakness. So I get that. But when it comes to kind of asking for help, and when you're kind of seeing all of those symptoms that I was talking about on that first slide and really, really struggling, there is no weakness when it comes to asking for help. Brene Brown, who I haven't gotten to talk about a lot today, but hopefully you guys have heard of her. She's amazing, lots of books, TED Talks, I'm trained in her work. You know, she talks a lot about vulnerability and really helping us break down the myths of vulnerability, and that vulnerability doesn't equal weakness. And so if you can think about, you know, here recently, maybe the most courageous or bravest thing that you've done lately, which doesn't have to be like, you know, standing in front of like pulling kid out of burning building or anything like that, but anything little or small that's been courageous or brave, you know, was there an element of emotional exposure? Was it risky? Was there uncertainty? There was, because that's the definition of kind of courage, is vulnerability. There is no courage without vulnerability. Anytime you've done anything courageous in your whole entire life, there's been vulnerability, right? Because it wouldn't be courageous if it wasn't vulnerable. It would be just an everyday thing if we, you know, in terms of like courage. So just a little PSA that asking for help does not equal weakness, even though maybe that is what you've been taught or just kind of learned. All of those things doesn't mean it. Then this other quote that I really, really like is from Elizabeth Gilbert, who's another author that I love and recommend to a lot of my clients. And she just talks about how when you're afraid of surrender because you don't want to lose control, but you never really had control, all you had was anxiety. I think the more we try to like hold on to things and the tighter we do to give us some sense of control, especially right now, we're trying to just control one thing because we can't control everything that's going on. Really, when we kind of step back, that's more of our anxiety because we're so, you know, discombobulated with everything that's going on. So asking for help, kind of like surrendering in that sense, doesn't equal weakness. So just a little PSA that I'm gonna throw out there. And then next, I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit about grief, because I feel this is really, really important with this pandemic specifically. I think you guys will get a copy of this PowerPoint, but in my resources page, I have a really good article on the pandemic and how it's really a collective grief that we're experiencing. And when I read it, I was like, holy moly, that's exactly what's happening right now, right? Kind of what Caroline was talking about earlier. This is grief for sure, right? It's a collective loss of the world that we knew. If we think about like 9/11, right? There was airports before 9/11 and airports after 9/11. Same thing now with COVID. It was kind of the world pre-COVID and the world post-COVID. And a lot of things we will never go back to the world that was pre-COVID. I know people say, and it's kind of silly, but like blowing candles on a cake, right? We'll probably never do that again because we don't want to spread our germs. So the world that we have been accustomed to is gone. And there's a really big heaviness there, right? That's grief. A grief. And I think some people are like, well, no, you know, nobody's died. And some people, I mean, not some people, a lot of people have died. And maybe you have experienced someone who has died of COVID, which then for sure that's a death loss grief, right? But outside of that, there's also like death of relationships, death of jobs, loss of physical touch, which is huge. You know, death of like gathering for worship, if that's your thing, or meals, or death of so many things. I know for me, I feel so much grief for my daughter. She's a toddler. She's 2.5. She's almost 3. And so she has just been with me and my husband, right? She's literally not played with any kids. And guys, telling you grief and break your heart that she is so wants to play with other kids that whenever we see kids anywhere, you know, she literally stares at them longingly for like minutes. And, you know, toddlers have a short attention span. So it breaks my freaking heart, like so bad. A lot of grief there for her, you know, for me, for all the things. So why do I think it's important for it to call it what it is, which is grief, is because of all of the emotions. Brene Brown talks about this. Grief is the emotion that we fear the most. We would prefer to feel anything but grief, right? And if you've experienced death loss grief, you know what I'm talking about. We would prefer to feel angry, which we do a lot of times. We would prefer to feel numb, or just pretend that it didn't happen. We would prefer to distract, avoid, and numb than to feel grief. It's just because it's a really kind of depressing emotion, right? It's a strong emotion. It's one that takes some time to work through. And a lot of times we want quick fixes. We don't want that time to work through that painful emotion. So the reason that I just like to name it, that I feel this is an emotion that we are all experiencing at totally different levels, of course, is because, and I'm going to talk about this in the last slide a little bit more, but if we do not name our emotions, then we do not feel it. And what we cannot name, we cannot tame, you know? If we don't even know what we're feeling, we can't work through it at all. And that's when we're just gonna numb, distract, avoid. And then pretty much it's just gonna, you know, we still have the feeling, we're just not dealing with it, but really it's dealing with us. And how that shows up is all of those symptoms that I showed you guys on the first slide. When we don't really work through our feelings, whether that's with professional help or without, you know, and I'm gonna give you a little exercise how to do it without, they kind of do us. Brene Brown talks a lot about how we think that we're thinking beings first and then emotional, but we're actually just emotional beings who think sometimes. And so, yeah, if we don't work through these emotions, they kind of do us in a sense. So grief is, in my opinion, what I think we're all kind of experiencing. Really, to kind of just feel grief, we have to just kind of feel our feelings. I think sometimes we want to get out of grief quickly by finding the meaning of this. And I think people are really trying to find the meaning in COVID, which I get. And I think there will come a time where we will do that. But I think right now it's just working through that pain of grief, which is sometimes really the hardest kind of part to kind of work through. If we don't feel it, we won't heal it, kind of thing. So we really want to feel it, which definitely sounds counterintuitive, I know. So I might be saying, okay, well, I've never maybe been one who's great about feeling my feelings. Here it is. Oops, sorry guys, whoa. I think it's pretty sensitive. So how do I feel my feelings? Well, here you go, step by step, how to feel your feelings. And you guys might be thinking, okay, this is like some woo-woo stuff, and I get it, but this is all kind of based in research. And again, if we cannot just, guys, we are not robots. Even you as lawyers, I know, have feelings, right? We all have feelings. So the more we can just acknowledge them, even though they might be really scary, I promise you that simple practice can give you a lot of relief. Trust me. I have so many clients that come in and don't know how to identify their feelings, and I kind of work them through this exercise and encourage them to practice, and it gives them so much relief, just this simple exercise. So feeling your feelings. The first thing we want to do is we just want to identify your feelings. A really good way to do that is by using an emotions wheel, which I'm going to show. There's an emotions wheel on the resource page. You just look at it, see what emotion you're feeling, identifying it. Then just acknowledging your feelings. So it's okay that I'm feeling grief, or that I'm feeling upset, or that I'm feeling overwhelmed. That's all. What your mind is going to want to do is it's going to want to go into the story mode, because that's what our mind does. So an example of this is like you have an argument with your husband, and then you go into story mode thinking that he doesn't love you anymore because you've gained 20 pounds. Don't do that, right? If we were to truly just let the emotion come and go through our body, it would be gone in 10 seconds. But what stays for long is that story that we attach to it. So we don't want to do that, but it takes a lot of practice to not do that. So if you feel yourself going into story mode, just stop, don't do that. A good way is just to kind of focus on your body. Again, going back to like the continuum, just focus on how your body is feeling. I'm feeling tension in my chest. My throat feels really like it's closing up, right? I have a hard time breathing. Just focusing on your body helps bring you out of your mind and more and just into your body. Helps stick with those feelings, stay out of story mode. Then it's just about doing something, regulating. So that's kind of where breathing, moving, dancing, screaming, any of that stuff can really, really help. And then what I talked about, you know, just stop thinking your feelings. It's going to want to go into story mode. Just stick with your body, stick with your feelings. That is really going to help you kind of like move through. If you have a really hard time doing this, a lot of research has shown how much or how little we value emotion comes from what we're taught or saw growing up. So just know that it might take a lot of practice, because this stuff is really learned and modeled. And if we didn't have that, then we're not going to know how to do this stuff, guys. So this is just a really simple but very powerful exercise to kind of help you guys work through your feelings. And then the last slide is just the resources page. Just briefly, Brene Brown, I talked about a lot. I didn't go into this book, but I highly recommend it for like burnout. A lot of science stuff by the Nagoski sisters. This is the article that I was talking about, the emotions wheel, good stuff on these resources. So that was it. I feel like that was really fast, but let me know if you guys have any questions. I think Justin will let me know, and I'm happy to.
Addie, do you have a minute for an exercise? Were you going to direct us through an exercise today, or?
Yeah, I mean, I can if you guys want to do like a deep breathing exercise. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Right before you go into that, I just have a couple of comments about some things that you that you said in your presentation. I really love the part about the Charlie Brown adult who's going wah, wah, wah. And if any of us have been in a really emotional situation with a client or opposing counsel, and we're standing there and we're thinking, I'm being so reasonable. I don't understand why they don't hear me. And if they're in that state, that more primitive brain state, of course they don't hear you. And that makes so much sense to me now. And I think this was really helpful to kind of see the difference, you know, between the wah wah and actually helping them regulate. So I do have a trick, actually. I was in a case several years ago, and there were several contentious people that I had to deal with on a regular basis. And I developed a little trick to help get through the conversations. And I realize now it's very related to that regulate R that Addie talked about. So before the call, I would prepare myself mentally and physically. I would get really calm. So I would do the tricks that I know to do, which is the deep breathing, having my notes in front of me and the points that I know I want to hit. And when I would get on the call and I would feel that person's energy coming at me and they're really hyped up, I would react by just like getting like a turtle. Like, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to bring my head in. I'm not going to jump into it with them. And I would slow them down by slowing myself down. So I would force the whole conversation to slow down by doing my own breathing through the call, and also by deepening my voice and just slowing everything down. And it worked so well with almost everybody I've used it on. So it's that whole idea of getting back into a rhythm and just getting us out of this like type of frenetic energy and into a much more relaxed energy.
Yeah, and then just quickly, yes, because the best way that we can help regulate others is by staying regulated ourselves. Because there's like this thing called mirror neurons, and so when and you guys could even practice it with your kids, like when you stop and kind of take a deep breath, they may also stop and take a deep breath too, right? And when, yeah, you slow down your voice, that's awesome, Carolyn. You did it intuitively, because that's exactly what we kind of do as therapists. Sometimes we invite the client, but a lot of times we can just model that and it be powerful.
Yeah, I really like that. And then another thing I really related to in your talk had to do with burying your feelings and being much more in your head than in your body. I'm an Episcopalian. I grew up in my family learning how to mask emotions. And I think for me, it had to do with control. Like, I want to be in control of my emotions. I don't want to give away my secrets by letting them know how I'm feeling. And I carry that with me to this day. But what happens is I mask it from myself too. So something will happen to me on day 1 and I won't feel angry until day 2 or day 3. And then I'm a raging lunatic because like it's taken days to catch up with me. And it's really, I've made it very difficult for me to identify what I'm feeling when I'm feeling it and then actually reacting, because I've trained myself otherwise. And I've noticed one of the positives out of COVID has been how much time I've been spending outside and how much time I've been spending exercising, because I feel so much better. And it goes back to that regulation, right? If we get into a rhythm of walking or swimming or just a rhythm that is outside of our, like getting us out of here and back into our bodies, it can be a great way to cope with stress and to get us back to that calm state instead of being in the fear and the what was the other state? I can't remember, but the
like afraid. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I thought that was really helpful. And one other quick thing I've noticed, if you've ever had a client that's an adult survivor of childhood trauma, I tend to have a lot of them for some reason. We'll talk about an issue several times, you know, and I'm thinking they're getting it. And we have to have the same conversation a month later and a month later and a month later. And it goes all back to that. What state are you in and where can you reason and accept information? Are you in the alert and the reasoning state, or are you down here in this, I'm reliving childhood trauma from 20 years ago all the time? And I think if we understand that about our clients, we don't get so frustrated with, we just had this conversation last week or last month. I put a memo together. Why don't you understand what I'm saying? And this is helping me understand. Maybe I just need to repeat it a few times. Maybe they're just not in the state where they can even understand what's going on. So, but
yeah,
thank
definitely.
You so much. Yeah, thank you so much for your calls. I don't see any questions either. Do you have possibly a 5-minute or 3-minute deep breathing you want to do? If not,
we can do that. So I'll just walk you through a progressive muscle relaxation. This is one of my favorites that I really like to do, and the reason is that, going back to like the brain and everything, when we're in that afraid state and our body is kind of taking over, we tend to really tense our muscles. So you might have experienced this where, you've gone through something and then you come home and you feel like you're in a marathon, but you really didn't do anything, but your muscles just feel so darn tight. That's because when we're in that afraid state, we tense our muscles naturally, right? Because we're getting prepared to fight or flight this thing that probably not there, but that's what our mind feels like. So our muscles feel really, really tense. So this is a really good one to do at the end of the day, specifically before you go to sleep. PMR really helps you do that. And you can do it just by doing it to yourself, or just search YouTube progressive muscle relaxation in my resources. I have a really good one that you can do as well. So I just want you guys to kind of sit in a comfortable position. And if you want to shut your eyes, you can do so if you feel comfortable. And then let's just begin by taking a really big, deep breath in. And kind of noticing the feeling of air filling your lungs. And hold it for a few seconds. And then release the breath slowly. And just feel that tension kind of leaving your body. And take in another really deep breath and hold it. And again, slowly release the air. And now I just want you guys to move your attention to your feet and just begin to tense your feet by gently curling your toes and the arch of your foot. And just hold on to that tension and notice what it feels like. And now just release that tension in your foot. Just noticing the new feeling of relaxation. And now I just want you guys to move up to your lower leg. And I just want you to tense the muscles in your calves. Hold them tightly and pay attention to the feeling of tension. And then releasing that tension from your lower legs. Again, just noticing the feeling of relaxation. Just remembering to continue to take those deep breaths. Then I just want you to tense the muscles of your upper leg and pelvis. You can do this by tightly squeezing your thighs together. Make sure that you guys feel the tenseness without going to the point of strain. And then release. Just feeling that tension leave your muscles. And now begin to tense your stomach and your chest. And you can just do this by sucking your stomach in, so pulling your belly button all the way in, kind of squeezing harder, just to hold that tension just a little bit longer. And now just release the tension, just allowing your body to go limp and let yourself notice that feeling of relaxation. Just continue taking those big, big, deep breaths where you notice yourself breathing in slowly, and hold it, and then breathing out. And now just tense the muscles in your back, bringing your shoulders together behind you. Your hands go like this. And just hold them tightly. Tense them as hard as you can, but without straining. Keep holding. Really, really want to feel that tension in your body. And now release the tension from your back. Just feeling that tension just slowly leaving your body, and the new feeling of relaxation kind of setting in. Just notice how different your body feels when you allow it to relax. Then I just want you to tense your arms all the way up from your hands to your shoulders. You can make a fist and squeeze all the way up your arm and hold it. And then release the tension from your arms and shoulders. Just notice the feeling of relaxation in your fingers, your hands, your arms, your shoulders. You notice how your arms just feel really limp and at ease. Now I want you to move up to your neck and head. We hold a lot of tension in our face. So I want you to tense your face and your neck by distorting the muscles around your eyes and mouth. Just doing like this. Don't worry, nobody sees you. Just hold the tension. And just release. And kind of just release your, releasing the tension, feeling that new feeling of relaxation. And then finally, I just want you guys to tense your entire body. So your feet, your legs, your stomach, chest, arms, head, and neck. Just tense a little bit harder without straining. Hold the tension. And now release. Just kind of fully feeling your whole body go limp. Pay attention to the feeling of relaxation and how different it is from the feeling of tension. And when you're ready, just slowly begin to wake your body up by slowly moving your muscles, just adjusting your arms and legs. And opening your eyes when you feel ready. That's just an example of PMR. There's tons of progressive muscle relaxation stuff out there. You can do it on your own or just listen to a video.
All right. Thank you, Addie.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you both, ladies, both Caroline and Addie. We very much appreciate your contributions today. And as a final reminder, the CLE course number for the live broadcast will be provided to you via email to the address you provided at registration. You will likely see that email in the next few hours or less. If you do not receive that required information to self-report your participation in the CLE, please email me directly, trafficlawyersoftexasonline@gmail.com. No abbreviations. If you are participating in the CLE on demand, as a reminder, you will receive instructions via email to the address you provided at registration for self-reporting and with the online on-demand CLE course number upon completion of the online on-demand option. We appreciate all of our panelists today. We want to give a very heartfelt thank you to Kelly McMahon for facilitating, and also Cynthia Owens and all of the board members that made this broadcast possible. We very much appreciate all of the effort that went into making this such a success today, and we look forward to seeing everyone in January 2021 in Austin at our live CLE. Thank you very much.